Mary, sitting across from me in Mr. Carlson's office, declared, "I'm finally embracing my true self." Her words, meant for the therapist, felt like a public stripping, leaving me hollowed out, cornered by a pain that was hers alone. She glanced at me, a quick, almost imperceptible smirk. "It's a journey you wouldn't understand, Frank." The air in Mr. Carlson's office was always too still, too clean. It smelled faintly of lemon polish and unspilled secrets. I sat rigid in a beige armchair, the fabric itching my forearms. Mary sat opposite me, her posture relaxed, a faint, almost serene smile playing on her lips as she spoke. She was detailing her journey, her self-discovery, as if our shared life was merely a backdrop for her personal drama. A deep, cold dread settled in my stomach, coiling tighter, with each carefully chosen word she offered. Mr. Carlson, a man whose glasses seemed permanently perched on the edge of his nose, nodded, his pen scratching against a pad. "I realize now," Mary said, her voice soft, "that much of my past sadness, even the miscarriage, left me with deep insecurities. I suppressed so much." She paused, looking at Mr. Carlson, then briefly at me. "But now, with therapy, I feel truly seen. I'm finally understanding who I am." Her happiness felt like a physical blow, a calculated exclusion from her newfound peace. My discomfort was a stone, heavy and cold, resting in my chest. "Her choices, not her issues, are what brought us here," I interrupted, my voice flat, cutting through the therapeutic quiet. The words tasted like rust. "I'm the one suffering while she's out here exploring herself. Don't tell me this is about self-discovery when it's about betrayal." My gaze was fixed on Mary, whose serene expression faltered, replaced by a flicker of irritation. Mr. Carlson's pen stopped. He shifted, turning his attention to me. "Frank, let's explore your emotional needs. What did Mary not provide before her decisions?" His tone was even, professional, designed to pull me into the script. I scoffed, a dry, bitter sound. "Affection," he wrote down. I watched the word form on his pad. Affection. It seemed such a small, fragile thing to be at the core of this wreckage. "Funny, isn't it?" I muttered, not looking at either of them, but at the worn pattern on the rug. I didn't get much warmth, but Kevin certainly did. He got all of it. The name hung in the air, a physical weight. Mary flinched, a slight tremor passing through her. I leaned forward then, my voice low, but each word distinct. "The truth is, I felt a distance, a lack of connection, just months after the honeymoon. It wasn't overnight, it was a slow fade, a gradual chill that set in." Mary's eyes widened, a genuine shock spreading across her face. It was the first honest emotion I'd seen from her all session. Perhaps she had truly believed I hadn't noticed or hadn't cared. The session ended, a quick, sterile wrap-up. I walked out into the crisp autumn air, the anger a hot, throbbing pulse behind my eyes, sadness a dull ache beneath it. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a relentless hum against my thigh. I ignored it, the world outside Mr. Carlson's office feeling as distant and indifferent as the space between Mary and me. Back in the quiet, too-large house, I moved through the empty rooms. The pills sat on the kitchen counter, ibuprofen, some antacids. I poured a fresh cup of coffee, black and bitter. A half-empty bottle of prescription mood stabilizers, prescribed after the initial shock, sat forgotten in the back of a cabinet, a testament to my refusal to numb out. Mary's narrative of her pain, her self-discovery, chafed against my own, raw and unacknowledged. She conflated her self-pity with the brutal fact of her betrayal, and it made my jaw clench. Friends tried to offer comfort, their words feeling like platitudes. "You're overreacting, Frank. Give her time. People make mistakes." Each well-meaning phrase only solidified my isolation, a misunderstanding that felt colder than any anger. No one seemed to grasp the specific, crushing weight of my hurt. That weekend, I drove north to my brother Dale's place. Beth, his wife, had made her famous chili. They sat on the couch watching a football game, Dale's arm resting naturally around Beth Joyce's shoulders, a shared glance over a bad call, a quiet laugh at an old joke. It was a simple, easy intimacy I found myself observing from a distance. Their loving bond was a mirror, reflecting the stark emptiness of my own life. It made the loneliness inside me feel like a tangible presence. The game droned on, a background hum to my persistent thoughts. Mary's self-centered pain, her journey of self-discovery, it all felt like a performance. I wanted her to truly understand my profound hurt, the slow, agonizing death of what we had built. Not just her convenient narrative, but the specific gut-wrenching pain of being betrayed by the one person I trusted. I thought of Brenda, an old friend from college. She would have understood this emptiness, this silent screaming. She always had a way of seeing past the words, straight into the truth of things. Suddenly, a light rap on the front door startled me. I looked up. Cindy, Mary's 18-year-old sister, stood on my porch. She was bright, a splash of cheerful defiance against the fading afternoon light. Her smile was wide, full of an almost unsettling confidence. She'd changed, I realized, not just growing taller, but a sparkling, determined personality now shone through her eyes. "Aren't you going to invite me in, Frank?" she asked, her gaze unwavering. "Come on in, Cindy." My voice sounded a little strained, and I pushed the door open wider. She stepped inside, bringing with her a gust of cool, damp air and the faint scent of rain. Her eyes, I noticed, held a new depth, a knowing glint that unsettled me. It wasn't the innocent curiosity of a young girl anymore, but something more deliberate, more aware. Boy. Cindy shed her light jacket, tossing it onto the hall table with an easy confidence. She turned back to me, her bright gaze unwavering. "So, when are you finally divorcing Mary?" The question, delivered without preamble, startled me. It was direct, too direct for polite conversation, but there was no malice in her tone, only a frank curiosity. I cleared my throat, feeling a flush creep up my neck. "It's complicated. Mary's attorney is drawing things out. They're making it difficult." My explanation felt thin, an excuse for a delay that was consuming my life. Cindy just smiled, a small, knowing curve of her lips. "I told you, didn't I?" she said, her voice soft, almost a whisper. "Right before you married her, I said I'd make you like me more than Mary." Her eyes sparkled, a flash of something playfully mischievous, something that had always been part of her. I remembered it then, a warm summer afternoon in Mary's parents' backyard. Cindy, a lively 12-year-old with knees perpetually scraped, had shadowed me, chattering incessantly, clinging to my arm. Mary had snapped at her once, telling her to go play with kids your own age, a clear irritation in her voice. I'd found it endearing, a relief from Mary's more reserved nature even then. Now she stood before me, a vibrant presence. Her figure was sturdier than Mary's, less delicate, with a clear, youthful strength. Her legs, I noticed, were different from Mary's slender ones, yet equally lovely in their own, more robust way. The observation surprised me, an unwelcome intrusion of thought. I tried to put some distance between us, gesturing vaguely towards the living room. "Want a drink? Soda?" I wanted to avoid past mistakes, the kind that led to messy complications and painful repercussions. But Cindy, with a graceful pivot, confidently stayed close, her presence a warm, almost magnetic force. She moved to the couch, settling in as if she belonged there, and picked up one of my worn football magazines. "Honestly, Frank, these announcers are terrible. They sound like they're reading the cereal box ingredients." Her teasing was light, unburdened. A laugh, genuine and unforced, escaped me. It was the first time I'd truly laughed in months, the sound a foreign echo in the quiet house. I felt myself relax a fraction, and without thinking, I joined her on the couch, leaving a polite, yet shrinking, gap between us. The evening unfolded easily. We talked about family, about old vacations to the lake, about what our parents were up to. We reminisced about shared Christmases, each memory a small thread connecting us. We made fun of the football game's droning commentary, finding a comfortable rhythm in our casual observations. It felt strangely familiar, like slipping into an old, well-worn sweater. At some point, as the game headed into the fourth quarter, Cindy reached out. Her hand found mine, resting lightly on top of it. I didn't pull away. Her touch was warm, soft, and for a sliver of a moment, an unexpected happiness bloomed in my chest. It was a faint, almost fragile feeling, but it was there, a brief reprieve from the relentless ache. After the final whistle blew, a familiar sense of unease began to creep back. The age gap, the messy, still unresolved divorce. I considered sending her home, a quiet, sensible voice whispering warnings in my ear. But Cindy, though she didn't say it, seemed to want to stay. Her eyes lingered on mine, her movements slow, unhurried. "It's getting late," I said, trying to keep my voice even. "And it's really coming down out there. You call me when you get home, all right?" The rain outside seemed to crack open, sheets blurring the window pane, a relentless drumming against the roof. It felt like the inside of my head, heavy and confused, each drop a new thought falling, stirring up a maelstrom of conflicting feelings. The next few days were a blur. I replayed the evening over and over, each moment amplified in my mind. A strange mix of guilt and longing settled in. Guilt for the unexpected pleasure of her company, for the moral implications of my situation. Longing for the easy connection, for the genuine laughter. Cindy's youthful energy, her vibrant spirit, stood in stark contrast to Mary's current self-absorption, her constant narrative of her own pain. It was a sharp, clear difference from the draining weight of our crumbling marriage. Then my phone rang. It was Cindy, her voice bright and eager, pulling me further into her orbit, offering a momentary seductive escape from my dark thoughts. The phone calls from Cindy grew more frequent, then transitioned into meetings. Coffee at the diner on Main Street, long drives along country roads where the cornstalks stood brittle and brown, or just talking in my living room. The silence between our words no longer awkward, but comfortable. I found a genuine comfort in her company, a quiet solace that had been missing for too long. Our conversations deepened with each passing day. Cindy spoke of her dreams, of wanting to travel, of finding a job where she could truly make a difference. She talked about her own small vulnerabilities, the fear she held about the future, the pressure to figure things out. And slowly, cautiously, I began to open up too. Not about the divorce itself, not yet, but about the gnawing pain, the sense of profound loss that had hollowed me out. She listened, truly listened, without judgment, a rare quality I found myself craving. Mary, in one of our terse weekly phone calls about the house, even noticed. "You sound a little better, Frank," she'd said, her voice flat, devoid of any real warmth. "Guess you're finally accepting things." Her words, meant as an observation, landed like a small, dull punch. Her perceived blindness, her unwavering self-pity, fueled a growing resentment in me. She couldn't see past her own carefully constructed narrative, couldn't fathom that my improved mood wasn't about her at all. Cindy's presence became a secret, a dangerous solace. It was intoxicating, this alternative to the misery of my crumbling marriage, a quiet rebellion against the wreckage I was living in. But beneath the comfort, a constant hum of moral implications buzzed. She was Mary's sister, years younger. The lines were blurring, and I knew deep down that this tangled web was fraught with peril. Dale called one evening, his voice gruff with concern. "You still hold up, Frank? You need to get out there, man. See people. Don't let this thing swallow you whole." He meant well, of course, completely unaware of the one person who was pulling me out, even if it was into a different kind of complicated mess. I mumbled something non-committal, promising to try. One crisp autumn evening, after a drive out to the old stone quarry, we were sitting in my living room again, the lingering scent of wood smoke from the fireplace still in the air. Cindy turned to me, her eyes serious, direct. "You're always holding back, Frank. What is it? Are you afraid of what people will say?" Her question hung in the air, blunt and unflinching. I took a breath, the truth a bitter taste on my tongue. "Yes," I admitted, my voice low. "I am. It's complicated." I hesitated, then pressed on, a dam breaking inside me. "But I'm also so damn lonely, Cindy. And you're just good for me. You make me feel seen, appreciated." The words, once unspoken, felt raw and vulnerable. She didn't speak, just reached out, her hand finding mine, her fingers intertwined with mine, a gentle, comforting pressure. We sat there in the quiet glow of the lamp, a tender moment passing between us. It was a quiet understanding, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken truths between us. In that moment, the boundaries shifted, pushed further than either of us had intended. Then, the words tumbled out, all of them, about Mary's affair, the casual cruelty of it, the cold, calculating way she'd moved on, the deep betrayal that had shattered my world, something I hadn't been able to fully articulate to anyone else, not even Dale. Cindy listened, her expression shifting from concern to a quiet, simmering anger. "She didn't deserve you, Frank," Cindy said, her voice soft but firm, a surprising maturity in her tone. She squeezed my hand, her loyalty fierce, unwavering. It touched me deeply, a balm on wounds I hadn't realized were still so open. She offered comfort, not pity, a distinction that felt profoundly important. The line between brother-in-law and something more blurred rapidly, fueled by my raw vulnerability and Cindy's unwavering affection. It was a dangerous cocktail, and I knew it, but I couldn't seem to pull away. I began to imagine a different future, a future without the constant pain and conflict, a future that, unsettlingly, included Cindy. A simpler life, perhaps. One where I wasn't constantly walking on eggshells, constantly bracing myself for the next blow. Meanwhile, the divorce proceedings dragged on. Mary's attorney, a sleek, humorless man, continually filed new requests, new motions, prolonging my agony, stretching out the painful end of what we once had. It felt like a deliberate torture, a way to ensure I couldn't move on, couldn't find peace. The therapy sessions with Mary had become a tiresome ritual, a formality devoid of any real purpose. I sat opposite her again in Mr. Carlson's quiet office, listening as she recounted her journey, her healing. Her words, once painful, now felt distant, like a broadcast from a station I no longer tuned into. I felt increasingly detached, observing her as if she were a stranger, her voice a muted hum in the background of my thoughts. Mary, sensing my detachment, finally looked at me, her brow furrowed. "You're just checked out, Frank," she accused, a thin edge of hurt in her voice. "It's like you don't even care anymore. I'm trying to heal, and you're just indifferent." Something snapped inside me. The carefully constructed facade of composure crumbled. "Indifferent?" I countered, my voice low but sharp, each word precise. "Do you really think this is indifference, Mary? Or do you think this is what happens when you decide to blow up our life? These are the choices you made. Don't act surprised when there's nothing left for me to care about." Her face, usually so composed in these sessions, went pale, her jaw slack with stunned surprise. Mr. Carlson cleared his throat, but neither of us acknowledged him. The session ended with an awkward silence, a final, irreparable fissure opening between us. As soon as I was out of the office, I got into my truck and drove. Not home, not to Dale's. I drove straight to Cindy's small apartment on the edge of town, an urgent, desperate need for her understanding gripping me. The road blurred, the afternoon light fading into a bruised purple. She opened the door, her eyes immediately searching mine, her face etched with a familiar concern. "Frank, what's wrong?" Her warmth was a stark contrast to Mary's emotional distance, a beacon in the storm swirling inside me. She pulled me in, her hand on my arm. "I can't do it anymore, Cindy," I blurted out, the words raw, aching. "The divorce, Mary, and I can't connect with her. I can't pretend anymore." My hands clenched into fists, then relaxed as I looked at her, truly looked at her. "I don't want to connect with her. I want to connect with you." The words hung in the air, audacious, terrifying, liberating. Cindy's eyes welled up, bright with unshed tears. "I know, Frank," she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. "I've been waiting for you to finally see me, truly see me." She stepped closer, her hand rising to cut my cheek, her touch gentle but firm. Our first kiss was not born of sudden passion, but of profound emotional relief, a desperate longing for connection. It was tentative at first, then deepened, a quiet understanding passing between us, a dangerous commitment made without a single spoken word. In that moment, the world outside, the messy divorce, Mary, the judgment of others, all faded. There was only Cindy and the desperate, aching need to be truly seen, truly felt. I knew in the back of my mind that I was crossing an irrevocable line. The moral implications were undeniable, a complex web of betrayal and hypocrisy. But the desperate need for connection, for someone who understood, outweighed all my qualms. It was a selfish act, perhaps, but one born of deep, unyielding loneliness. The secret relationship with Cindy intensified rapidly, becoming a thrilling and terrifying escape. Every stolen moment, every hushed phone call, every touch felt charged with a dangerous energy. I struggled, in moments of quiet reflection, with the hypocrisy. I had been outraged by Mary's affair, by her deception, and here I was doing something remarkably similar, albeit with different circumstances. The irony was a bitter pill. Cindy, in her careful way, introduced me to her friends as a family friend. It was a flimsy veneer, a transparent attempt to maintain appearances, but it was all we had. We attended a local band's gig at a dive bar, a picnic by the river, always in groups, always with the plausible deniability of being just friends. But in a small town, nothing stays secret for long. The subtle observations began, a neighbor seeing my truck at Cindy's apartment late at night, a chance encounter at the grocery store, our hands brushing a little too long. The town's small-town grapevine, that intricate web of whispers and glances, started to buzz with subtle observations about Frank and Cindy's frequent sightings. I could feel the eyes, hear the unspoken questions. Fleeting moments of guilt would surface, sharp and unwelcome. But they were quickly overshadowed by the profound happiness Cindy brought, a feeling I hadn't genuinely experienced in years. It was a fragile happiness, built on a foundation of secrecy and moral ambiguity. But in my barren emotional landscape, it felt like everything. So, I hear you've been spending a lot of time with Cindy lately. Dale's voice on the phone was measured, but I could hear the underlying suspicion. The small-town grapevine, it seemed, had delivered its payload. My heart quickened, a sudden flush heating my neck. He'd heard whispers, of course, from mutual acquaintances, the kind who saw everything and said nothing, until they did. "What are you talking about?" I said, my voice sharper than I intended. "She's Mary's sister. I'm just being supportive. She's young, going through a lot of changes." The words felt hollow, even to me. Dale didn't sound convinced. "Frank, listen to me. This town talks. Mary is already going through enough. You don't want to add scandal to the mix. It'll only hurt her more, and it'll make everything messier for you." His warning was clear, a cold splash of reality. He was right, of course. Everything I was doing with Cindy felt like a direct parallel to Mary's affair, a twisted echo of my own betrayal. The knife of my own hypocrisy twisted in my gut. Mary's lawyer, true to form, used my perceived lack of cooperation in therapy as leverage in the ongoing divorce proceedings. He claimed I was emotionally and unengaged, making it impossible to reach an amicable settlement. It was a thinly veiled attack, a way to paint me as the unyielding party, complicating an already complex situation. The realization of my own hypocrisy, the bitter irony of it all, began to gnaw at me. I was outraged by Mary's betrayal, yet here I was, engaging in my own secret entanglement, albeit with a different set of circumstances. I tried to distance myself from Cindy, canceling a coffee date, making excuses about being busy, but the emotional bond, forged in vulnerability and shared loneliness, was too strong. She sensed my shift, her bright energy dimming to confusion and hurt. "What's going on, Frank?" she asked one evening, her voice small after I'd tried to cut a conversation short. "You're pulling away. Is it because of what people might say?" She looked at me, her eyes mirroring the question that haunted me. "You were so angry about Mary and Kevin. Is this any different? Are you being a hypocrite?" Her accusation hung in the air, blunt and unflinching. It was a punch to the gut, forcing me to confront my own moral failings, the potential pain I was inflicting. The anger I felt toward Mary for her affair suddenly felt tainted, diminished by my own actions. I saw the hurt in Cindy's eyes, the confusion I was causing. "No, Cindy, it's not you," I said, my voice rough. "It's me, all of it. The mess I'm in, the divorce, I'm just trying to figure things out." I reached for her hand, my thumb tracing the back of her fingers. "I'm sorry, I really am. I'll sort this out." But even as I said the words, I knew how deeply conflicted I was. Sorting things out meant facing consequences, choices I wasn't ready to make. The gnawing guilt and confusion grew. I started drinking more heavily, a quiet habit that began with a single beer after dinner and now stretched into several, late into the night. It was an attempt to drown out the noise in my head, the echoes of Dale's warning, Cindy's accusation, Mary's lawyer's smug pronouncements. Then the phone rang, an unfamiliar number. I answered, my voice slurred slightly from the whiskey. "Frank, it's Kevin." The name hit me like a physical blow. Mary's former lover. "I know this is out of the blue, but I wanted to apologize. For everything, for the hurt I caused." His voice was low, tentative. Rage, cold and pure, surged through me. All the old wounds, barely scabbed over, ripped open again. "Apologize?" I snarled, my grip tightening on the phone. "You want to apologize? After you ripped my life apart? Don't you dare call me again." I slammed the phone down, the sound echoing in the silent house. The call stirred up a fresh wave of anger towards Mary for bringing this man into our lives, for the casual destruction she had wrought. Brenda, noticing my decline from a distance, sent a text. "Hey, you all right? If you ever need to talk, I'm here." It was a lifeline, but I was too deep in my own mire to grab it. I just looked at the message, then put the phone down, pushing her away like I'd pushed away so much else. Meanwhile, Mary, in her own way, began to pick up on the subtle clues. A stray earring found in my truck, one that wasn't hers. A too long glance shared between Cindy and me at a distant family gathering. A whispered comment from a mutual acquaintance overheard at the grocery store about how often Frank's truck was seen near Cindy's apartment. Each piece, small and seemingly insignificant, clicked into place. The realization dawned on her, slowly at first, then with a crushing certainty. Her initial self-pity, her narrative of victimhood, began to curdle, hardening into a cold, furious determination. She wasn't just healing anymore. She was going to confront them. Stick around to the end to see how life's costly choices unfold. The fluorescent lights of the grocery store hummed, casting a stark, unforgiving glare. I was reaching for a loaf of bread when Mary appeared, seemingly out of nowhere, her presence radiating a chilling intensity. Her voice was low, almost a hiss, but each word was laced with venom. "Defiling our family, Frank? Really?" I froze, the bread slipping from my grasp. "Mary, what are you talking about?" The words were out before I could stop them, a futile, pathetic denial. My face, I knew, must have been an open book, my guilt palpable, a clear confirmation of every suspicion she held. My heart pounded, a frantic drum against my ribs. She stepped closer, her eyes blazing, utterly devoid of the sadness she usually displayed. "Don't play dumb, Frank. I know about you and Cindy. My own sister. Are you truly that desperate? That disgusting?" Her voice, though still low, vibrated with a raw disgust, a deep sense of betrayal that mirrored my own from months ago. The irony was a bitter taste in my mouth. "I'll expose you both," she spat, her gaze flicking around the busy aisle, daring someone to listen. "To the entire family. Everyone will know. And don't think for a second my lawyer won't use this in the divorce. You'll lose everything." The threat hung in the air, cold and calculated. Feeling cornered, trapped, a surge of desperate anger rose within me. All the suppressed rage, all the hurt from her own betrayal erupted. "You want to talk about disgusting, Mary? You think you're so high and mighty? What about Kevin? You forget your choices? You set the damn precedent." My voice had risen, attracting the peripheral glances of other shoppers. A woman pushing a cart with a toddler stopped, staring. The cashier at the self-checkout paused, her eyes flitting towards us. The scene drew unwanted attention, a public spectacle of my crumbling life. I felt utterly exposed, a profound shame washing over me, colder than any anger. The news ripped through the family like wildfire. Cindy was devastated, the initial shock turning to a deep, agonizing sense of being a pariah. The innocent girl, once bright and carefree, now felt tainted, branded by scandal. The weight of her family's judgment particularly her parents' heartbreak, was immense. They blamed me, of course, their anger a palpable force across the phone line. How could I do this to their daughters? Dale called, his voice strained, heavy with disappointment. Frank, he started, a long pause. What the hell were you thinking? Cindy? Mary's sister? Man, this isn't you. Our relationship, once a bedrock of shared history and easy understanding, became strained, a taut wire stretched to its breaking point. He struggled to reconcile the brother he knew with the man who had made such a catastrophic choice. Beth, his wife, remained silent on the line, her quiet disapproval just as crushing. The divorce proceedings, already a grueling battle, now took an even nastier turn. Mary's lawyer, armed with this new ammunition, wielded the affair with Cindy as a weapon, twisting every fact, painting me as a predator, a deceitful man who had preyed on a vulnerable young woman. The legal battle became a public shaming, a brutal dismantling of my character and reputation. I realized then, with a crushing certainty, the true price of my temporary happiness with Cindy. It wasn't just Mary's wrath or the financial cost of the divorce. It was the complete destruction of my family ties, my reputation in this small town, the very fabric of my life. Every relationship I held dear was now fractured, perhaps irrevocably. Cindy, overwhelmed by the backlash, by the judgment in her family's eyes, started withdrawing. The phone calls became shorter, the visits fewer. Her bright spark, the very thing that had drawn me to her, began to flicker under the immense pressure and public scrutiny. She struggled with her own guilt, the weight of being the other woman in such a scandalous affair, and the harsh judgment of her parents and peers. I descended into a deeper isolation than before, the house feeling larger, emptier than ever. The alcohol offered only a fleeting escape, the mornings bringing a renewed sense of despair. I felt that I had truly paid the price for my choices, a heavy, unpayable debt. My legal team, a pair of tired-looking men in suits that seemed a size too large, laid out the grim reality. Frank, one of them said, his voice devoid of emotion, given the circumstances and the unfortunate developments, we strongly advise you make significant concessions. A protracted battle will only cause more damage, financially and to your reputation. They spoke in hushed tones, the severity of my situation hanging heavy in the air. The divorce settlement stripped me bare. The house was sold, the equity split, much of it going to Mary as part of an alimony package that felt like a public punishment. I lost more than I anticipated, more than I thought possible. My once comfortable life, built over years, was dismantled in a matter of months. Mary, despite her legal victory, despite getting what she wanted, showed no satisfaction. Her face in court was grim, her eyes hollow. It was a hollow victory, tainted by the double betrayal, by the public spectacle of her husband and her sister. There was no joy, only a deeper bitterness. Cindy's family, desperate to shield her from the scandal and the relentless whispers, sent her away. To live with distant relatives, somewhere upstate, far from the suffocating judgment of our small town. The separation was abrupt. A phone call from her mother, cold and formal, informing me it was for the best. Just like that, I lost contact with Cindy. The vibrant spark, the solace she had offered, was gone, leaving me feeling more alone than ever. The silence in my small, rented apartment was deafening. I started contemplating leaving town altogether. A fresh start. Somewhere no one knew my name, no one knew my story, no one knew the mess I had made. But the thought felt like another defeat, another retreat. Dale, in his steadfast way, tried to mend bridges. He called, his voice softer, less judgmental than before. Frank, he said, I know things are rough. I got an opportunity, a foreman position at the plant up in Grand Rapids. You could stay with us for a bit, get on your feet. It was a chance, a lifeline, a tangible path towards redemption. But I was too consumed, too deep in the mire of self-pity and the crushing weight of my actions. I don't know, Dale, I muttered, my voice flat. Thanks, I'll think about it. I couldn't bring myself to accept, not yet. The idea of facing them, of being under their watchful eye, felt too heavy. One afternoon I drove to our old house, the one Mary and I had shared. It stood empty now, a for sale sign planted in the overgrown lawn, windows dark and vacant. I walked around the perimeter, my feet crunching on dry leaves, each step an echo of what was and what could have been. The garden Mary had planted, now a tangle of weeds. The porch swing, still there, but still. The memories flooded me, sharp and unwelcome. I found myself drifting towards the riverbank, the spot where Mary and Kevin had been seen. The memory brought back that familiar, sickening sensation, freezing from the inside. The quiet humiliation, the brutal knowledge of being betrayed. And then, the story's opening line, a ghost of an old feeling, echoed in my mind. I watched them sink into This Is My Story. The imagery took on a dark, personal significance, now not just about them, but about me. My own choices, my own descent. The crushing weight became unbearable. Public shame, personal failure, the loss of everything I held dear. Suicidal thoughts, dark and insidious, began to circle. A desperate, final solution to a life that felt irrevocably broken. Then, Brenda called again. Her quiet persistence, a steady, unwavering presence, finally broke through my wall of despair. "Frank," she said, her voice soft but firm, "you need help, real help. This isn't just about the divorce anymore. You're not beyond redemption. Don't let this swallow you." Her words, delivered without judgment, resonated. They were a flicker of light in the overwhelming darkness. Hesitantly, tentatively, I made an appointment with a new therapist, a stranger in a different town. It was a small step, a difficult one, but it was a step, a fragile attempt at rebuilding. The new therapist's office was different. No lemon polish, just the faint smell of old books and quiet understanding. I began therapy, slowly, painfully, unpacking the layers of anger, the betrayal that had consumed me, and eventually, my own culpability in the unraveling of my life. It was a long, arduous process, each session chipping away at the rigid walls I had built around myself. In time, I started to understand Mary's perspective, not as an excuse for her actions, but as a deeper understanding of the cycle of pain we had both found ourselves in. Her insecurities, her own sense of unfulfillment, had led her down a path of self-discovery that ultimately tore us apart. It wasn't absolution for her or for me, but a broader, clearer view of the tangled threads of our shared history. News reached me through a mutual acquaintance that Mary had moved away, out of state, seeking a fresh start for herself. She had truly left the past behind, a final severing of our connection. I felt a strange mix of relief, the constant ache of her proximity finally gone, and a faint, lingering regret for what we had lost, for the people we once were. Years passed. The quiet rhythm of my new life began to take hold. Then one day a letter arrived. The handwriting was familiar, yet matured. It was from Cindy. She wrote about her healing journey, about finding her own path, about the difficulty of forgiving herself and others. She expressed forgiveness towards me, a quiet, understanding grace that brought a flood of emotion. Tears, long held back, finally came. But with the emotion came a profound sense of peace. Cindy was okay. She had found her way. The letter was the catalyst. I finally called Dale, accepting his long-standing offer. I packed what little I had left and moved to Grand Rapids, a few hours away, to work in his landscaping business. The change of scenery was immediate. The new environment a welcome shift from the ghosts of my old town. The steady work, the physical labor under the open sky, provided a much-needed routine and a healthy distraction from the echoes of my past. Slowly, haltingly, I started to rebuild my life. I made new friends at work, at the local gym, at the neighborhood diner. Conversations were light, unburdened by history. I began to regain a sense of purpose, a quiet dignity in the simple act of living and working. I attended local community events, a craft fair, a small concert in the park, trying to reintegrate, to find my place in this new landscape. But the shadows of my past, though less oppressive, still lingered, a quiet reminder of the man I had been, the mistakes I had made. The moral lessons of my choices weighed heavily. I often reflected on how easily good intentions, the desire for connection, for understanding, could lead to such devastating outcomes, not just for myself, but for everyone around me. It was a sobering, humbling realization. But over time, I learned to forgive myself. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, but a gradual, deliberate process. I came to understand that true healing came not from forgetting, but from acknowledging my mistakes, from owning my culpability, and from growing, however painfully, from them. One crisp autumn afternoon, I drove out to a river near my new home. It wasn't the same river, but it served its purpose. I sat on the bank, watching the water flow steadily downstream, relentless and unceasing. The water imagery, once a symbol of despair and drowning, now represented purification, the ceaseless, forgiving flow of time. It carried away the debris of the past, leaving behind the smooth, polished stones of lessons learned. I carried the weight of my experiences, not as a crushing burden, but as a part of who I was. It no longer crushed me, it shaped me. It was a constant reminder, a quiet teacher, guiding me through the quiet rhythms of my new life. Years turned into a quiet rhythm. Frank found stability in Grand Rapids, a steady life built on hard work and introspection. He saw Dale and Beth occasionally. Their relationship had mended, though some unspoken hurts lingered. One crisp autumn morning, an invitation arrived: Cindy's wedding. It was a poignant moment, a final thread of closure. He wrote her a heartfelt letter, wishing her genuine happiness and offering his profound apologies for the pain he had caused. Frank remained unmarried, choosing a life of solitary reflection, punctuated by quiet companionship. He dedicated himself to his work, finding meaning in selfless acts. The pay the price theme had taken on a deeper meaning. It wasn't just financial or reputational. It was the deep emotional cost, the fracturing of trust, the profound loneliness. He understood now that morality wasn't black and white, but a complex tapestry of human flaw and sometimes redemption. A quiet peace settled in, mirroring the unchanging seasons of Midwestern life, reflecting his slow internal growth. The memory of Mary and Cindy remained, not as raw wounds, but as scars that reminded him of crucial lessons. He appreciated the small joys: a sunrise over the cornfields, a good cup of coffee, honest conversation. Frank accepted that the past was unchangeable, but the future offered growth. He was no longer the bitter, angry man, but one weathered by life, carrying his burdens with quiet dignity. Looking out at a wide open horizon, he understood that some rivers run deep and some scars never truly fade. But life, like the river, keeps flowing.